Reactions trailed federal government's decision to plow the Ibori loot into some federal projects. Agitations for the funds to be remitted into Delta State coffers. Mr. Femi Falana is with us on the program tonight for some legal perspectives. And tonight our conversation also will be on the choice of who leads Nigeria in the next presidential election, or the kind of president we need as a nation to get that into a conversation as politicians begin the politicking of 2023 presidency. Hello everyone and welcome to Politics Today, live on Channels Television. I'm Sean Kimberley, Channels Television's global headquarters here in Lagos, Nigeria. It's a midweek edition of Politics Today on Channels Television, and we'll be taking you on this 1 hour ride. So stay with us, everyone. Let's first tell you that the Federal Executive Council has approved the sum of 500 million naira for the construction of 18.7 kilometers Bulu Origbane Road in Bomadi local government area of Delta State. At a post-council meeting briefing, the Minister of Niger Delta Affairs, Senator Godswill Akpabio, explains that the project has already attained a 97% completion. Tonight, we get some legal perspectives into the legality of the return of the looted Ibori funds. Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Mr. Femi Falana, is with us on the program, and also will be looking at what you need to know in deciding who becomes Nigeria's president. So stay with us. It's going to be some conversation that you need as a Nigeria. Before we begin the conversation with Mr. Femi Falana on this first half of the program, let's check out some of your political roundup stories.
The Benue State Governor Samuel Ortom has faulted the federal government's compensation of over 4 billion naira to northern food and cattle traders who threatened the survival of Nigerians with food boycott to southern Nigeria, when, according to him, the same group of people orchestrated the attacks and displacement of over 800,000 farmers in Benue since 2017, and since then, there has been no intervention to resettle them. Governor Ortom describes the over 4 billion naira as appeasement to a group that is already rich and can hold the country to ransom, while those who really need the intervention for them to get back on track have been abandoned at IDP camps for 4 years simply because of injustice, lack of equity and fairness.
The IDPs, legitimate people who would have been given support and are suffering. And then people have had enough. They have enough money. They say they are stopping food supply there. You go and give them money.
The House of Representatives is asking the Federal Ministry of Finance and the Attorney General of the Federation to furnish the House with all particulars relating to the recovered loot from former Delta State Governor James Ibori. The House of Representatives is urging the federal government to ensure that the £4.2 million Ibori loot be returned to Delta State. The lawmakers insist that the funds were stolen from Delta State and as such should be rightly returned to the state. The funds, according to the lawmakers, is needed for infrastructural development of Delta. This was the resolution reached after a motion of urgent public importance which was sponsored by all the lawmakers from Delta State. Meanwhile, the lawmakers insist that the total money is £6.2 million and not £4.2 million as has been reported.
If federal government is allowed to appropriate the funds without recourse to the Delta State government, the people of Delta State will be shortchanged, deprived of their legitimate resources to improve on the economy of the state, as well as provide the requisite infrastructural development for their benefit.
Zamfara State Governor Bello Matawalle has given 2 months ultimatum to all bandits in the state to either repent and surrender their weapons or face serious consequences from the security personnel. Addressing newsmen during the statewide broadcast, the governor insists that activities of informants are becoming worrisome in the state. He says the government will face squarely any bandit that refuses to surrender within the stipulated time.
So let's get started, shall we, everyone? Yesterday, the federal government says it has sealed a deal with the United Kingdom government to return £4.2 million of stolen assets linked to the former Delta State Governor, James Ibori, some of his friends and family members. According to the Ministry of Justice, who spoke with us on the program yesterday, he explained why the federal government will be taking the money rather than the Delta State government. Mr. Malami said the money will be used for the construction of the second Niger Bridge, Abuja-Kano Road, and the Lagos-Ibadan Express Road. Based on the agreement signed, the £4.2 million is to be returned to the country in 2 weeks. Meanwhile, lawmakers at the National Assembly and some lawyers are insisting the monies must go to the Delta State coffers. Let's get some legal perspectives now from a senior advocate of Nigeria and rights activist, Mr. Femi Falana. He joins us from Abuja. Thank you so much, Mr. Falana, for your time tonight on the program. And let's get the matter started. Give us a sense of what the law says. The minister said the ramification of the return of the money took some federal and international law and diplomacy route. But from what we've seen in the past, in the case of Plateau, in the case of Bayelsa State, is there any difference to Delta State, especially the Ibori loot? All right, let's listen for a moment to Mr. Malami, and we'll be able to hear Mr. Falana afterwards. Let's hear what the Attorney General said yesterday on the program.
As far as the composition of people is concerned, I think the fundamental issue of consideration and of interest to Nigerians is Ibori is the principal character, and being the principal character, he was he had indeed stood trial and was accordingly convicted, and then arising from that conviction, these recoveries of today are being made. As to the details of who are involved, associated judicial proceeding is still ongoing. Recently, again, we succeeded in recovering about 5.4 million euros from Ireland. And again, we are, as it is now, succeeded in recovering 4.2 million pounds from UK. We are still pursuing other assets, inclusive of the fact that even as it relates to the Ibori's asset, the quantum of the amount involved was within the region of over 100 million pounds, and that it is out of it that we have succeeded in recovering a fraction of 4.2 million pounds, and we are still pursuing additional sum within the region of estimated region of 100 million pounds, and that will, as I stated earlier, be a function of conviction and the subsequent recovery process. Ever since we took a decision to challenge the judgment, it has been a success story all the way, and then our position as a government is being strengthened day in, day out, and we are very optimistic at the end of the day, taking into consideration the justice and fairness of the judicial system in UK. We will, by God's grace, be happy at the end of the day, and we expect a very positive outcome. We have a strong case that is becoming more stronger by the day.
There you have it, Mr. Falana. Let me get your take. Should the money have gone to Delta State government, what's your reaction to the Attorney General's defense of the money going into the federal government's coffers?
Well, no doubt the federal government ought to be commended for pursuing this matter, having regards to the fact that this case was a product of the collaboration between the EFCC under Malam Nuhu Ribadu and the Metropolitan Police, in the UK. But having said that, having acknowledged the role of the federal government, the fund has to be returned to the source. Factually, between 1999 and 2003, the Delta State government, like other state governments in Nigeria, received its statutory allocations on a monthly basis and paid same into the account of the government. From that account, some amount was alleged to have been diverted and taken to the United Kingdom by the then governor, Chief James Ibori. Now, the law caught up with him in the UK and Nigeria, and so he was convicted, his lawyer was convicted, his banker was convicted. So these funds were traced to the three of them. And as the Honorable Attorney General has said, the money is over £100 million. So what has been released now is the first tranche of £4.2 million. But again, as I said, since the money left the coffers of the Delta State government, it has to be returned once it is recovered. Having regards to the fact that the federal government cannot, under any law, under local or international law, lay claim to the money. As I said, pursuant to Section 162 of the Constitution, the Delta State government received the money from the Federation account and banked same in its account where it was taken, and, to the United Kingdom. Now the money has been confiscated there. It's now being repatriated to Nigeria. It has to be returned to the source. Because in the case of the Attorney General of Lagos State and the Attorney General of the Federation, the Supreme Court made the point, without a court order, the federal government cannot confiscate or seize money, belonging to local government or any other tier of either the local government or the state government. So I believe in this case, the money will have to be paid to the account of the Delta State government. Yeah, the government cannot rely on any law that allows the confiscation of the money or the disbursement of the money to taros outside Delta State.
Well, as the case is right now, we understand that it was an international offense relying on also a federal offense, that it wasn't a local offense. And in fact, when these funds was being fought for, the Delta State government was not in the picture. These are some of the legal perspective that we've gotten into this matter. And you're saying
it was not
all
a
of this
federal
does
offense, it was an offense in the United Kingdom. It wasn't convicted here. It was convicted in the United Kingdom under their own law. And so, under international law, and I'm talking of Article 35 of the United Nations Convention Against Corruption, ratified by both Nigeria and the United Kingdom, the money, any money that is recovered, any proceed of corruption that is recovered, will have to be spent, compensate the victim. You have to spend the money to compensate the victims of the proceed, of the corrupt practice. In this case, the federal government is not the victim, but the people of Delta State and the government of Delta State. And if you are talking about precedent in Nigeria, because there is a precedent, that will guide the action of the federal government. When the fund recovered from or confiscated from Governor Joshua Dariye in the United Kingdom was recovered and repatriated to Nigeria, it was paid, it was remitted to the account of the Plateau State government. In the same vein, when Governor DSP Alamesia was convicted in the United Kingdom and about £1 million was recovered, some of £1 million was recovered, repatriated to Nigeria, it was also paid to the Bayelsa State government. So what is good for the goose is good for the gander. So the federal government cannot, on the basis of precedent, treat Delta State differently. If you are going by another section of the Constitution, Section 42 of the Constitution, discrimination is prohibited. So you cannot discriminate against the Delta State government and favor, Bayelsa and Plateau State in the same circumstance. So this is, as far as the law is concerned, the case of the federal government is very, very weak. It would be a different matter if the federal government has said, we are going to use this money, with the consent of the Delta State government, to tar the road between Asaba and Warri or Warri and Benin. You want to construct roads in the state, but to simply yank the money or confiscate the money and decide to go and spend it on Kano Abuja Road or Lagos Ibadan Road is totally unacceptable.
With
Totally
what we see,
unacceptable.
yeah, so I would like you to also give us specifics of what the law says. Does the law say that the money had to be returned to the coffers of Delta State or used to the benefit of the victim, Delta State as a victim in this sense?
No, I am talking of Article 35 of the United Nations Convention Against Corruption, which provides that once the proceeds of crime is recovered, corrupt practice is recovered, the money will have to be spent on compensating the victim. In this case, the victims are the government and people of Delta State, not the federal government.
So what I'm saying,
the money will
sorry,
have to be spent
Mr. Falana. So what I was asking is, should the money have been given cash to Delta State government, or the federal government should have used the money in a prosecuting project for Deltans or the Delta State government or for Delta State?
No, the federal government has no local standard with respect to how the money is spent. That is left for the people of Delta State to monitor the government of that state to ensure that the fund is not relooted. But to say that the federal government will, the federal government cannot grandstand on this manner. In fact, the memorandum of understanding referred to by the Attorney General, signed in London, smacks of colonialism. I mean, Britain cannot, decide on how recovered loot should be spent. In fact, what I expect the Attorney General or the federal government to do in the circumstance is to collaborate with the Delta State government to ensure that the banks that were housed the looted wealth of Delta State or the banks involved are made to pay colossal damages and interest for denying the people of Delta State the opportunity to use the money for development. And there are cases that have been handled this way.
So, Mr. Falana, apologies again too. So, shouldn't the Delta State government be taking this head on? Because directly, they are supposed to be asking for this.
The Delta State government, the Delta State government will have no choice because we are talking of over £100 million. That is a lot of money under, this economy, under this peripheral capitalist system. That's a lot of money where the economy is being dollarized on a daily basis by the central bank, to the detriment of the national economy. So this is a huge sum of money that cannot just be left in the coffers of the federal government.
We are due for our first break, Mr. Falana.
So, and the Delta State government is the owner.
Yeah, we are due for our first break. I'm just looking at a very tough road for the federal government because on the basis of which the government of the UK is releasing this money is for those 3 projects. So, but when we come back from the break, we look at that legal hurdle for some other issues relating to what we saw today where labor leaders storm the National Assembly over minimum wage. We get your legal view on that too. But we'll take a moment, everyone. We'll take a breather. I'll be right back. Join us again, everyone. Thank you so much, everyone, for staying with us. We have Mr. Femi Falana, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, rights activist, who's been talking to us from Abuja. Thank you so much, Mr. Falana. So I was given that premise on which the minister told us yesterday that the only way or the premise on which the UK government released the funds is because of some of these projects that are being used. And I remember vividly, Mr. Falana, if you also can remember when some civil society organizations have pushed that monies that were looted and repatriated are being relooted. And so some governments who were housed this money are saying the basis of which we'll release this money is when we know in specific the project which these monies are going to be released. But give us an understanding of how difficult for Nigeria. This money will come in 2 weeks for them to now bypass the agreement upon which this £4.2 million was released.
Well, thank you very much, Seun. As far as the Constitution is concerned, any memorandum of understanding or agreement or treaty signed or entered into by the federal government and another country will have to be domesticated in Nigeria under or by virtue of Section 12 of the Nigerian Constitution. Once that agreement has not been domesticated, it does not have the force of law in Nigeria. So any memorandum of understanding or agreement will have to be read subject to the Constitution of Nigeria. So there isn't much in that agreement. And I am saying, morally and legally, the British government cannot dictate to Delta State what to do with its own money. That is the prerogative of the House of Assembly of that state to appropriate the money that has been paid back into the account of that state, having been recovered in the United Kingdom. That's the law.
Another angle to this, I mean, this has caused a lot of debate. You remember what had happened in the past when Mr. Ribadu, the then EFCC chairman, said he was given a $15 million bribe by the former governor. The government yes. of Delta State at the time said there was no money missing from our coffers. In that sense, if you also look at the judgment where this monies, this indictment was made in the United Kingdom and all of the premise, do you still think that it might be easy to get the money to Delta State?
With respect to those who have canvassed that argument, I'm aware of the facts of that case. And the case was decided in Abuja here by the Honorable Justice Gabriel Kolawole now of the Court of Appeal. And that was when the Delta State government said, oh, the $15 million bribe paid to Mr. Ribadu, which he submitted, to the federal government, was not from the account of the Delta State government. That judgment was limited to the $15 million bribe. It does not cover all other recoveries made later, as in this case. So that case is totally irrelevant and inapplicable to the facts on ground. The case in England was fought from the High Court to the Court of Appeal. The defendant lost totally, which led the government, the courts in the United Kingdom to order that the fund be recovered and repatriated to Nigeria. In fact, the trial judge in these cases, the trial judges, in fact, one of them expressed agony, disappointment with the fact that this huge money has left the poverty-stricken state, Delta State in the Niger Delta region. The court said that. It didn't say, oh, this money belongs to the federal government.
So, I mean,
the federal government, as I said, should be commended for pursuing this matter.
So, should the federal government go ahead and spend this money legally, what will happen?
No, the federal government will have to be challenged. More so that there is a precedent. You cannot treat equals unequally. Where you had returned money stolen from the accounts of Bayelsa State and the accounts of Delta State, Plateau State. When it comes to Delta, the law cannot be different. The treatment cannot be different. If you do that, the government will be accused of having committed, a constitutional infraction with respect to freedom from discrimination. And for me, the Delta State government has the right to go to court. And I'm aware, I can tell you here, Chief Edwin Clark an elder, statesman from that state, has already given us instructions to pursue this matter if the Delta State government will not take it up.
But would
Yes.
I mean, would you have a locus
the matter
standing
is going
in
to
that
end
matter?
in court, obviously.
Would you have a locus in that regard?
No, I'm the lawyer. It's chief.
No, that I'm saying, you and your client.
Of course, as a citizen. Of that, he has the locus. The law of locus standi has been expanded by the Supreme Court in the case of Awemi and Akilu, where the court said, we are all our brothers keepers. So, Chief Edwin Clark will be saying, I'm playing the role of my brother's keepers by ensuring that the people of Delta State, are given the opportunity to be compensated by having this money spent on development of that state.
Okay, we'll see. It's going to be an interesting one, legally speaking, and we see how the Plateau and the Bayelsa case might rub off in this matter. And of course, I'm also wondering, Mr. Falana, how this will play out with the remaining almost £100 million that is remaining in the United Kingdom. But let me get another view from you. And this time around is the protest that we saw today, where Labour leaders are protesting that they will not allow the lawmakers to put on the concurrent list the issue of the minimum wage. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think it was, the protest was a very popular one, among the working people of our country, and for all progressive forces. That protest, it should be commended. Because for those who use the argument of federalism to campaign for liberalization of minimum wage so that people can pay slave wages in our country, with profound respect. That has nothing to do with federalism. That has to do with slavery. Because the United States of America is the bastion of capitalism, the bastion of federalism. The first bill that President Biden sent to the Congress is to have the minimum wage in America increase from $7.50 to $15 per hour. And that has been passed. Another law that has just been passed is the stimulus package of $1.9 trillion in that country. But here, our people are asked to tighten their belt all the time. Whether there is recession or not, for the people, they are permanently in recession in our country because of gross mismanagement of the economy of our country. Now, on this one, Chapter 2 of the Constitution provides, Section 16 provides, that workers in Nigeria shall be paid a living minimum wage, not 30,000 naira, a living minimum wage. And you will agree with me, 30,000 naira cannot be said to be a living minimum wage in Nigeria today. But even the Minimum Wage Act, enacted in 2019, has been breached by not less than 18 states. And this has nothing to do with lack of money. It's all about priority. It's about prioritizing projects, and deciding whether you want to promote the welfare of the people. So, as far as I'm concerned, the protest by the labor unions today, was in order. And I do hope members of the National Assembly and the various houses of assembly in the country will appreciate the need to prevent the payment of starvation wages in our country, which is what the national minimum wage is all about.
All right. So perhaps my final question tonight with you is going to be on what I read about your comments on what the president said on the shoot-on-sight order that he gave to the military, to those who are carrying AK-47. You said that statement does not hold water. What do you mean by that? What else do you think the president should have done?
No, as far as, again, by virtue of Section 35 of the Firearms Act, the president has to make a proclamation with respect to prohibition of possession of firearms in the country, arms and ammunition. That's the law. There has to be a proclamation. It cannot be an announcement by a media aide of the president. The president has to make a declaration, sign it as if he's, issuing an executive order. And the conditions will have to be stipulated. Because what the announcement was to the effect that those who are carrying AK-47 in the bushes should be shot on sight. Again, I can never clap for any president who gives a shoot on sight order. We criticize President Obasanjo when he gave a shoot on sight order on the OPC members. We criticize President Buhari when he gave a shoot on sight orders on election riggers in 2019. And we made it clear then and now that there are provisions of the law dealing with, for instance, rigging of election, allegations of murder, or illegal possession of firearms. But when you say go and shoot on sight, innocent people may be shot. But once the president has declared a war, as it were, on bandits and terrorists and deploy the armed forces, it implies that anybody caught with arms and ammunition will be shot because they are killing innocent people, including children. They are kidnapping children, school children, they are kidnapping women, kidnapping other people. And so they have declared war on Nigeria. The same thing with the terrorists, And so they, in act of self-defense, the president has asked our troops and the police, to root out these dangerous criminal elements. But to now say that anybody caught with AK-47 should be shot on sight, what the law requires is that they be disarmed, arrested, and prosecuted. If found guilty, jailed.
All right.
So if the president wants to call for the death penalty, a bill has to be sent to the National Assembly for illegal possession of firearms.
It's always a pleasure to hear you speak on some of these legal issues, Mr. Femi Falana. Thank you so much indeed, Senior Advocate of Nigerian Rights Activists, for your time tonight.
Thank you very much. My pleasure.
Let's switch gears now and talk about 2023 presidency and the expectations of many Nigerians. Well, many have started talking about the kind of president we need as we aim at the 2023 presidential election. Well, some people might say it's too early to be talking about that. But is it too early to plan? But if you are not satisfied with something, shouldn't you be planning early enough to fix it? And so a lot of people are already talking about what they want and how they want it. Some people are already talking about alternatives. Tonight, our attention or our focus is about creating some kind of a checklist and setting an agenda on the minds of Nigerians on the criteria needed for Nigerians to decide on the type of leader they want or want to see. Tonight, I have Mr. Ladipo Johnson, a public affairs analyst here in our Lagos studio. Thank you so much, Mr. Johnson, for coming tonight. And from our Abuja studio is a lawyer, Mr. Daniel Buwala. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming.
Good evening, thank you.
So let's begin the conversation. From the South Pole to the North Pole, there are diverse opinions on what has become an unwritten rule in Nigeria, politically speaking. Oh, if you have 8 years, we should have 8 years. And some people say it is not even the best for us. What do you think, in your own opinion, is the best to deciding who should govern this country as a president?
Well, I think we need someone who can challenge the status quo. Someone who is an outlier, who's willing to ask the hard questions. Our federating relationship, insecurity, the economy, and many, many other issues. Someone who can put all those things in the front burner. A younger, more vibrant, more dynamic person. I think the country needs to consider all these things. We cannot continue to do things the way we've been doing them and expect to have a better country, a more egalitarian country. We can't. We have to be willing to change things, to ask ourselves the hard questions. And so I don't think at this stage that we should be talking about North and South or Christian or Muslim.
It's become somewhat a very strong oriented rule. Nobody is not in the
It's
constitution.
because things
but
are not
politicians,
working.
Yeah.
It's because things haven't been working. When things are not working, then you start to talk about how you share the national cake.
But the arrangement,
But
that understanding you think is not worked?
It has kept the balance, as it were, because things are not where they ought to be. If things were working properly, efficiently, the Igbo man wouldn't care if the person ruling or governing is from Igbira, or is from the north, or is from Lagos. They wouldn't care because the atmosphere is there, his business is working, commerce is thriving. But because government hasn't worked or hasn't reached the optimum stage, we have people saying, okay, it's our turn. Okay, we're left out, and what have you. That is the problem. And that is why the younger generation in this country must get up, get involved, and make sure that the agenda for 2023 is properly set. And that
So you're clamoring for a younger,
more dynamic person.
a younger president, right?
Yes, not just the president, in in most of the other positions as well.
Why young people?
Well, because one, on average, law of averages, the younger person survives the older person, on average. An elderly person may not take the decisions that will be in the interests of a younger person's next 10, 20 years. His decisions may be short-term because he's living for the short term. You understand what I'm saying? A younger person is planning for today and for the next 10, 20 years.
Has any of the young people who are in office today impressed you so far?
Oh, yes. There are people, look, everyone has, they have question marks against their names. But you see, what is ahead in 2023, we have to look at what they've done, look at their scorecard, above all, and then say, yes, what is happening? You have people like, well, we have people in the House of Representatives, we have people, some in the Senate, we have some of the governors, especially we have a young governor as well, okay? We have, in Kogi State, we have Yaya Bello, who got involved with, for instance, the food crisis we were about to have. Now, that, I don't know much about him. That shows that this person is looking not just at his state, but beyond his state as well, and things like that.
So young is relative. So
it's relative, but young with capacity.
So if you look at
young
the president,
with capacity.
If you look at the president, what age would you suggest, for example?
It would depend on the people there.
Okay.
Some say young, not more than 50. You understand? Some say young 60 or what have you. I say
or
young.
75 as young at
No.
Let's bring Mr. Bwala before we go to break. Mr. Bwala, do you agree with Mr. Johnson on some of the checklists that he has ticked tonight for the next president of this country?
Yes, I do agree that the reason why people agitate for the younger generation of leaders to take over government is because associated with the youth is vibrancy, is flexibility, is creativity. And in fact, in Thocism, when a young man is thrust into power, there seems to be a reverberation of hope and optimism among the younger generation because it resonates. It sends a message that, look, there are possibilities in this country and I can achieve my dream, I can attain my aim. There was a time in this country, it was the younger people in the army that were led into the Second World War that began what we call nationalism. It was the younger generation of people that began the nationalism across the West Africa that led to the independence, to the point the colonial masters could look at this younger generation that were about to take the reins of a fresh country. They trusted them and entrusted powers to them. And they actually worked. Younger generation of people form both the parliamentary system of government and the presidential system of government. And you cannot argue that within this period, these younger leaders in government were able to do greater things. At what point did we miss it? That in fact, we no longer have confidence and trust in younger generation when you can in fact make a case that the present day young people are far better and more creative than the younger generation that led to the birth of Nigeria. But unfortunately, the older generation appear to have grasp of power. And the younger generation do not, up till now, it has not come to their realization that this power will not come by asking. It will come by you taking the powers. And there are many strategies to adopt. The most important thing among the young people is to look at competence.
Yeah, so I will allow you to talk more on some of the issues that you have raised, specifically about the issue of capacity and how the fact that young people will not find themselves. They have to fight for it. But I'll allow you to dwell more on that after this short break, everyone. Don't go anywhere. We're still talking about a checklist for those who will be leading Nigeria in the next round of elections. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Thank you, everyone, for staying with us. You perhaps at some point maybe tweeted or sent a WhatsApp message or read something about 2023 presidency. A lot of people have said, look, maybe it's too early for us to talk about it. At some other conversation, have it that we need to start talking about it so that we can get a hold on the kind of leadership that we want. And so that's where we're giving you that opportunity to hear and see what Nigerians are talking about. Ladipo Johnson, a public affairs analyst, and Daniel Bwala, both gentlemen, are talking to us, giving us experience and knowledge of their thoughts on how and ways we need to go in 2023. Let's go to our Abuja studio with Mr. Bwala. Young and capacity, that is one thing. Mr. Johnson spoke about the zoning arrangement. Has it worked? Has it not worked, Mr. Bwala?
Well, you see, people talk about this zoning arrangement, and some people try to throw it up as if because it is in an unwritten code, it does not apply. If you look at the Constitution says the composition of the government of the Federation must be run in such a way that it will reflect the principles of federal character. And when you compose a government, you start with the president, the vice president, and you come down to the last person in the civil service. And so if the president continued to come from one part of the country without prejudice to the fact that other parts of the country are covered in other positions, it does not fulfill the mandatory requirement as provided in the Constitution. That is number one. Number two, when people talk about the zoning power move here, power move there, for the time immemorial, power has been moving only between two geopolitical zones in this country, between the northwest and the southwest. Whenever power goes to the south, it doesn't go to the southeast, it doesn't go to the south-south. Whenever power goes to the north, it doesn't go to the north-central, it doesn't go to the northeast. But because it is zoned, it is broken in such a way that they say power moves to the north, then go and fight for it. Power moves to the south, go and fight for it. Two advantageous regions have dominated the space. And so where do you start in the argument? Do you make the case from geopolitical zones, or you make the case from this broken region into south and north? There is inequality in all of these places. Even if you look at the composition of government in terms of appointment and possibilities and opportunities, it still moves within these two regions, dominantly above and over other regions of the country. They will tell you that in democracy, it is a game of numbers. So if they produce the numbers, when they bring government to bear, the government will have to factor them. But when we talk about leadership amongst the young people, are we merely asking it for the age, or we're asking it for the competence? The reason why emphasis is placed on the age is because this younger generation of people are mobile. They are moving. The same set of people that could not get councillorship in Nigeria have found themselves as congressmen, mayors, governors, and parliamentary members in countries where the nuclear code is the most important thing. But you come back to Nigeria, a country of less than $1 trillion, in terms of whatever we have, They don't trust the younger generation. You find political party playing lip service whenever election cycle comes close, and they talk about we believe in the youth, we believe in the youth, all kinds of announcement and advert you see. But in actual fact, do they believe in the youth?
But Mr.
Then
Bwala,
the greatest culprit of all is the media, the members of the press. I'm sorry, Seun, you are trying your best by covering for the youth, but good. The press have not given the right coverage for the younger generation of you are trying your best. That's what I'm saying. To stay on them. One or two occasions they talk about youth, and then we all go back to the old. But the younger generation, these guys in Flutterwave, these guys in Paystack, these guys entrepreneurs, these guys in politics, has there been emphasis? Are you covering them to look at what they are doing? Are you profiling them? Because by doing so, you will guide the country. The media will guide the country away from the old to the new generation. Because no matter your capacity, if you are not covered, nobody will know you.
Trust me, we're setting an agenda on the kind of leadership, because we believe here at Channels Television that if we get leadership right, we probably have gotten a lot of percentage right in some of the issue in the polity. And that's why we're setting the agenda in the taste and the value and the style of the kind of people we need to see in power. But quickly, let me get to your view. Joe Biden, the 46th president of the United States, is 78 years old. People will ask you, experience is needed at that level of leadership. Do we need, or, I mean, Mr. Johnson was saying 50 years, a benchmark for young people that he's talking about. What's your own benchmark? Can we allow a younger person with less experience to be at that level of leadership in this country?
My benchmark is not far from what the Constitution set out as the benchmark. That is the benchmark for the age that will qualify you for run for the presidency of the country. And the Constitution is not foolish about it. When you mention Joe Biden, he didn't win the presidency of America because they lost confidence in the younger man. Remember, Barack Obama ran, he was just one-term congressman in this, senator, and from there he didn't go for governorship directly. He won the party primaries, he won the election, and became the president of the United States and governed for 8 years. You want to go to Canada? Do you want to go to France? Do you want to come down to England? These are countries of courts, nuclear courts. These are countries that are in the first world of power. How did the younger people navigate it? Because the system was not rigged. Our system is rigged against the younger people. Whichever way you turn. That's why the NSAS movement that happened the other time, the positive that we can draw from the NSAS movement is that if they can channel this energy into a political party, believe me, 2023 will speak volumes. But as long as the younger generation of people continue to hide under the umbrella of one rich politician who brandish the idea of youth, but does not even believe in that project, or does not even have the competence, the younger generation that will win presidency in Nigeria must believe in vision, must believe in leadership, must believe in education, must believe in science, must believe in unity, must believe in cohesion, must believe in enthusiasm. The criminal activities across Nigeria, banditry and the rest, is because the younger people have lost hope in governance. That's all.
So let me bring back Mr. Johnson. Mr. Johnson, you heard what he said. He said the system has been rigged against the young person. So how can that young man or young woman who aspire to the highest office in the land get his head above the water to swim across to the shore to becoming what he or she aims to become?
Well, we look at the young ones as a whole. If you look at the register, the INEC register, from the age of 18 to 35 years, they form 51% of the voters register. From the age of 36 to the age of 50, they form 29%. So that shows you that if they move en masse, and the agenda is set, and so it's not too early. If they move en masse, then concrete decisions and concrete achievements could be made in this regard.
Well, I mean, so now the big question is, you've given all this data and these statistics.
Yes.
How do they go about it? How do they move? What can happen? I mean, is it an alternative, or they some of the political parties must be forced or to somehow lobbied to ensure that this criteria, this checklist is implemented.
We're even fortunate that you have so many political parties, and you can have as many as you want. But even with the existing major parties, there's nothing that stops young ones from coming together. And they won't all go the same way, because we're not just talking about youth for the sake of youth. Some will be right of center, some will be left of center, some will believe in the policies of the PDP, some will believe in the policies of the APC. Some will believe in supporting existing people who are already in government at one level or the other. But what we are saying is that, and you see, yes, I said that some say 50 and below, but I just say that it's not just the age, but as time goes by, we have to continue to talk about competence. We have to talk about someone who can unify the country, someone who can bring all sorts of things to the table.
So for those who are saying Southeast should be given you think that you should jettison that and let's say, or what do you say?
I'm not saying that you should jettison that. In everything we must balance. Like the example of Joe Biden. Joe Biden came in to correct an existing thing. Obama came in during his own time. JFK came in during his own time. Gowon was there, maybe at the age of 20-something. Obasanjo finished his first stint as head of state, probably at the age of 30-something. Nigeria did not break. Nigeria did not fall.
So should we still follow the zoning but have a young person? Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying that we can have a young person, and if you have the square peg, square hole, then you look at the zoning.
All right.
If not, but we have to make sure that whatever we do, whether zoning, whether rotation, it must be a competent person and a person that can lead us properly in the 21st century.
All right, let me get Mr. Boala's thoughts, and which will be a final one on some of the comments you heard Mr. Johnson say. Where do we go from here? You are the one who said the system has been rigged. So how can a young person get into the scheme of things?
The young person can, there are two ways. One, by a revolution through political process. And number two, by a sitting president making a determination that he will make that as his last legacy. When John Obasanjo was living, you remember, he ensured that he chose from among the younger governors who will become. So if that political will is there on the part of Mr. President, he can cause the emergence of a young man in APC. Then as per whether power should go to the south or to the north, you see, you will not be fair to the northeast or north central or southeast or south-south to brandish this out, because you know that anywhere you move it, the bigger ones, the big boys, will seize it. But these are basically the two ways. Through revolution by a movement of people, not occupying street and terrorizing government, but forming a political movement and begin to canvass the takeover, or by a president determining that in his party, he will ensure that a younger person emerge. Without these two, you will find out that when the election cycle comes, we will still go around these politicians. They will make all the noise in the wall. We will talk all the talk in the talk, and then we'll go back to square one.
Amazinzali, it's a conversation I think will birth more conversations around the kind of people we need in public political office. If private people are doing well, government and public officers must do well, and it will happen in our time. Thank you so much, Mr. Ladipo Johnson, for coming tonight, and Mr. Daniel Boala. Thank you indeed for your time tonight. What a day is it? A day.
And a happy birthday.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. That's our show today, everyone. Many thanks for watching. I'm sure Akim Ale. Have a splendid evening, everyone.